Welcome you all to Ghana Talks Radio. My name is Ohima Lillian. The Ghana oil and gas industry has witnessed substantial growth in recent years. Stay put as we update you on unlocking Ghana's oil and potential.
By Mr. James Amwa to provide a video address. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, the CEO and staff of the Ghana Upstream Petroleum Chamber, Chairman for Parliamentary Select Committee on Mines and Energy, Honorable Atachimo, CEO and staff of all EMP companies present, General Manager Engineering and staff of Ghana National Petroleum Corporation, and all other petroleum sector agencies present, our friends from the media, ladies and gentlemen. I bring you warm greetings from Dr. Martin Opoku-Prempeh, Member of Parliament for Malaysia South, and Honorable Minister for Energy. In whose stead I am delivering this keynote address. He wanted to be here with us today, but has been prevented from attending due to other equally important commitments out of the country. Ladies and gentlemen, the Ghana Upstream Petroleum Chamber's hard work and dedication to organizing this conference deserve an applause. We have gathered here as captains of Ghana's upstream industry to discuss the challenges we may face and the opportunities available to us if we are to sustain Ghana's petroleum industry. This discussion is very important, given the current circumstances and the need to sustain our respective businesses, whilst we also improve the livelihoods of those who depend on them. It is a known fact that the energy transition has had a global impact on the oil and gas industry. For some time now, we have seen different levels of commitments among oil majors. The energy transition is increasingly influencing investments and strategies are diverging. Funding for petroleum projects has become scarce, whereas that for clean energy is in abundance. Due to this constraint, many IOCs, independents, and even international financial institutions, which hitherto was the support and pillar for the exploration and production in Africa, have been forced to divest their business portfolios to focus more on cleaner energy projects for security. As a country that relies heavily on foreign direct investment and expatriates expertise, funding and technical capacity constraint could stymie our efforts to continue exploring and exploiting our hydrocarbon resources in the future. To develop our hydrocarbon resources, we may rely on indigenous companies, including our local financial institutions. But unfortunately, the majority of these companies lack the full capacity for oil and gas exploration and production. The few that are even risk averse. Aside from the funding and technical capacity constraints, technology may also limit our future ability to efficiently explore and recover our hydrocarbon resources. The same people who wage war against hydrocarbon projects have largely developed and patented most of the existing technologies used in our industry. This implies that no further investment will be made to advance the industry's existing technologies, potentially limiting efficiency, safety, and improved recovery of hydrocarbons in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, a significant portions of African hydrocarbons are processed and consumed outside the continent, owing to insufficient processing and consumption capacity. As a result of this decision by others, people are abandoning our hydrocarbons in favor of clean energy. If the demand and support from the West disappears, it might be difficult, if not impossible, for us to continue to explore and produce our hydrocarbon resources because our continent lacks the adequate market and infrastructure for the processing, storage, transportation, and transformation of hydrocarbons. We can only make progress if we develop our markets and infrastructure to enable us to support and trade among ourselves. Despite these challenges, the continuous demand for oil and gas coupled with high cost of clean energy may be compelling reasons to continue to explore and produce oil and gas resources. According to Wood Mackenzie's Simon Flowers, Simon is the chairman and chief analyst and the author of The Edge. He said, and I quote, "Even if we do get onto the 2 degrees Celsius pathway, there is still a likelihood that oil and gas demand will remain higher for some years to come." Unquote. In that case, we in Ghana will want to continue with exploration and find new reserves to offset the natural decline in production from our existing fields. Domestically, oil and gas continue to be a catalyst for the development of our economy. Natural gas is already playing an important role in power generation and will continue to do so for a long time. Given our current national energy transition framework, hydrocarbons and clean energy will coexist in Ghana and most of the African countries for the next decades to meet our energy needs. The energy transition itself presents enormous opportunities for oil and gas industry. Various components of modern energy systems, such as solar panels, wind turbine blades, batteries, thermal insulation for buildings, and electric vehicle parts, are made from hydrocarbon-derived materials. Even our clothes. Taking advantage of the available opportunities, oil and gas, taking advantage of the opportunities, oil and gas exploration and exploitation will continue until clean energy can meet the world's energy demands. Nonetheless, deliberate efforts must be made to reduce or capture emissions from the hydrocarbon activities, as well as to develop the market and infrastructure in Africa for the processing and transformation of petroleum into other products. In order to sustain Ghana's oil and gas industry, the government has implemented a number of policy reforms aimed at accelerating the development of the country's hydrocarbon resources. The Petroleum Exploration and Production General Regulations were recently revised to permit exploration within development and production areas without the need for a new petroleum agreement. Previously, in such cases, a new petroleum agreement would have to be signed, which could be a lengthy process. This decision will allow existing license holders in Ghana to explore and produce prospects that were likely not commercial a few years ago or that has been newly discovered in their contract areas. This newfound flexibility in our upstream regulations may also attract investors in the industry. The Model Petroleum Agreement has also been reviewed, and the procedures for obtaining parliamentary approval are in place. Specifically, the fiscal terms have been revised to make them more flexible and in line with the current conditions in the oil and gas industry. Another interesting development in the industry is the revision of the local content regulations to include channel and strategic partnerships that will allow foreign companies to provide services and transfer knowledge to indigenous people without incorporating necessarily in Ghana. This has alleviated some of the bottlenecks that businesses face when coming to execute short-term jobs in Ghana. The government is also working hard to close infrastructure gaps, to improve the markets, and ensure that we get the most out of our hydrocarbon resources. It has initiated plans to establish a petroleum and petrochemical hub, that is the Petroleum Hub Development Corporation Limited. The PHDC is intended to be a leading integrated hydrocarbon complex created to add value to the upstream and downstream oil and gas value chain in Africa. Upon completion, the hub will span over an area of 20,000 acres and will house a complex web on onshore, offshore, and ancillary assets not limited to refineries, petrochemical plants, and storage tanks intended to change the face of the petrochemical industry of the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, the success of Ghana's and Africa's oil and gas industry in the energy transition era are dependent on collaboration to ease the necessary funding and establish adequate infrastructure and markets both in country and at the continental level. Partnerships must be formed between governments and private businesses and national oil companies across the continent. In light of this, the government decided with the support of Parliament to join the African Petroleum Producers Organization, APO, in August 2022. The primary goal of APO are to encourage African countries to collaborate in order to provide adequate funding for oil and gas projects, as well as to encourage the development and sharing of infrastructure for research, processing, storage, transportation of petroleum products. As a continent that has yet to significantly benefit from its hydrocarbon resources, APO's goal is to develop the entire oil and gas value chain on the continent so that we can trade among ourselves. Ghana's partnerships allow us to take advantage of these and other benefits. When foreign interest in oil and gas exploration and production dwindles, Ghana's association with APO can be used to build capacity and take over the mantle from expatriate companies in developing the nation's hydrocarbon resources. I would like to encourage particularly the Ghana National Petroleum Company and then the Ghana Upstream Petroleum Chamber to foster collaboration among its members to work more closely with the government of Ghana to develop the country's hydrocarbon resources for our mutual benefit. To ensure the maximum extraction of our hydrocarbon resources, we must devise mechanisms for financing our projects and invest in research and development. To conclude, Mr. Chairman, maintaining Ghana's oil and gas industry will present challenges, but we can overcome these obstacles and reap enormous benefits from our hydrocarbon resources if we form the right partnership. Thank you for your attention, and I wish you a fruitful conference.
Thank you so much.
Well, GMPC, since I joined in way back in the 90s, has always done that. What we do is, in the beginning, we had our data scattered all over the world because we have various vintages and other people who held it. We brought it all to Ghana, and then we ensured that we put it in its way that anybody who wants to explore for oil and gas can access. That has been done. Then we discovered commercial gas in 2007, and since then we've been doing everything. What we do is we get the data, we generate prospects. What we do is we look at the S bar from the data that we have and know where potentially we get oil and gas, and then we tell people that it could be here, and then government, that's a Petroleum Commission and Ministry of Energy, negotiate a petroleum agreement with our participation, GMPC's participation. And then in doing that, we still work with oil and gas companies to ensure that they can be able to explore and make discovery. And after making discovery, we work with them that they can develop it and produce. And they produce it at a very good price. And we GNPC have always ensured that we do not bring pricing, or the other side does not work in a way that the projects are too expensive. Sometimes we can shave off like $1 billion from the developer, sometimes more, just to bring something to Ghana. And one of the things that we did in the past was to negotiate a gas price for 200 million scars of gas, free for Ghana. And we've used it till the early this year. And that's what we used to generate electricity to build the midstream. That's what built Ghana Gas. That's what built the pipelines that we have. That's what allowed the power plants to generate power for us using gas. And we built that system. So now we can continue to do more commercial oil and gas.
Honorable Samuel Atachia, MP for Abuakwa. Thank you.
Well, this is a big surprise to me. So, I want to stand on existing protocols and say a few things. I think coming close to the chamber has convinced me about the power of thinking. It's a thinking chamber, but when people are doing the thinking, and you don't want to deplore the thinking for benefit, and we become the losers. So I believe strongly that in terms of the serious things we are doing about oil and gas in the realm, there should be a more serious like cross-fertilization of the ministry, in which you are driving some of the policy issues. I believe it will help us immensely. Because I was very excited when they spoke about policy clarity. See, where we can have predictability and certainty in terms of those who are interested in investing so much in the industry, benefit from that kind of thing. Well, I'm not an oil and gas expert. I happen to be the chairman of the Mines and Energy Committee. A brief time, the first time I'm chairing the committee like that. And a few things I'm learning. I don't think I understand it. But my chief concern is that oil and gas is sufficient to turn around the economy. I am fully persuaded that if oil and gas should be permitted to run full throttle, Ghana will be something else. But if that is the logic, and the experts converge on this logic, that oil and gas is superior to cocoa, and all the other natural things we claim we have, why is it that our sense of investment in the area is so challenging? I can tell you on top of my head that you find situations in which GMPs is saying that they're expecting the Ministry of Finance to release their monies so they do their programs. I can't believe that is true, but that is a fact. That is a painful fact. The Ministry of Finance is looking for good money. The good money is in the oil and gas, and they don't want to release some monies to do GMPs. The statutory body mandated to drive the oil and gas industry in the country. I sit down there, I wouldn't think as a lawyer, I'm paid. How can you do such self-sabotage and think we can function well? I believe if we did serious matters with oil and gas, it won't go to IMF.
Once it wouldn't work, so that we just managed to survive. In that storm, next slide. Okay, pre-pandemic, yes, the Paris Agreement, we all know how we all got ourselves involved in this some years back. We all signed to something we didn't really know how it's going to turn out in the future. That we're not going to use oil and gas. I mean, I was stupid. Somehow we signed on. And then, for some years, a lot of campaign to once you sign on, you meet up the agreement. This agreement is killing us. We're telling ourselves it's killing us. How do we get out of this? So we started a campaign. Mildly, at every forum, whenever we go to anywhere, but we have energy poverty. How can we live oil and gas? It's the only thing we have. Because, like you all know, oil and gas, since 1956, Oloibiri in Nigeria has been the greatest contributor in terms of foreign exchange earnings in Nigeria. So, suddenly, we are faced with this 196 countries, the parties, climate change thing, and so on. We signed on, like we said, inclusive of Ghana and Nigeria, 2016, 2017. We didn't know the real implications. So the transition, we all know, is not new. The early men were eating their food raw. Suddenly they discovered they could spark some stoves and then bring some fire. Oh, transition started. And then, after some time, we moved on to wood, to coal, and somehow we saw oil as a better deal. And now we are getting used to the oil and the gas, and the transition is telling us we need cleaner energy. Next slide. Yes, we believe this current transition is marked by global politics and an intense lobby to decarbonize with multinational oil companies that persist because their industries are tied to politics. This has proven true with what is happening now. What we always see is that whenever they run into any crisis, all the international companies, whether the US, whether Russia, whether all of them, they just turn to the abandoned source of energy without telling anybody, without caring whether they are polluting the environment or not. It's only about survival. That's what we just discovered. And that is why you could see Russia still using coal, Germany still buying coal from South Africa, seeing all sort of, even the UK, last year, they moved in some coal into their energy mix when they had issues. And the Ukraine issue, when it came on, then we now saw the real politics. And then we saw people from the EU Minister for Energy came to Nigeria, and he said, we're in trouble. I was shocked when I heard. He said, because we now need the gas from Nigeria. Oh, the minister said, are you sure? He said, yes, we need your gas. Then Minister Silva was there. He said, okay, when you come back, tell your people that they must fund infrastructure so that we can have the gas. I said, it's as simple as that. So he went back. So he didn't get the gas, but he had to go and tell his people, whichever way you want to go about it, you cannot just stop funding something and say you want it. We don't have the money. So that's the politics in this. We discovered the politics was real. So many of the companies, they deferred their projects, they shifted budgets to renewables and solar, wind, hydrogen. So we have a need. We saw the need for us, and then we campaigned for African producers to reinvent ourselves because of the changing global landscape due to the transition. We had to take some decisions. Next time. Go on. Next one. Okay, year 2020, the year of disruption. Okay, we have said that. Health, and then severe health crisis, and then the sector was affected, and then companies were laying off staff to simplify portfolios and assigning ways to create value. Next. Next slide. Next. Okay, great. So the effects of COVID-19 pandemic on the oil and gas sector cannot be overemphasized like a key portion of the global energy mix. These effects are reduced global and local production of crude oil we're still trying to get the production to come up since then, strongly. Though we have other reasons why some of our production lines are stopped. We're partnering with some vandalization of pipelines. So some producers find it difficult to produce into pipelines that just like giving it out free. So we're working around the clock to solve vandalization of pipelines in Nigeria. Reduce government revenue due to low prices of crude oil. The prices fell so low. And then reduce oil field services. The rig count went from 23 to like 6, practically. And lots of expats, yes, I remember then, most of the Chinese that were all around, they couldn't come into Nigeria. Then debt restrictions, change of locations and so on. And then declining foreign direct investments into the sector was practically almost zero. And then we couldn't meet our contractual obligations all through the COVID period. And the licensing round that we planned then, we couldn't go ahead. Who is going to take the license from you when everybody is practically not producing? So next slide. So the emerging oil and gas landscape. So after COVID, so what were the things that happened? We realized with COVID that digitization of operations was necessary because we did a lot of working online, a lot of things online during COVID. So that became the in thing after COVID. So everybody had to start working to digitize their operations. Renewed drive for energy transition. That is another one. Because of the COVID, discovered that the carbon footprint, I remember that, was very low, during COVID. And because of that, there was a renewed drive. Like, yes, we've been saying this. COVID happened, and the footprint went so low. So we have to continue the drive. So there's a renewed drive by the internationalizing, all the countries that were driving the green thing. The global defunding of fossil fuels projects continue. All the IOCs, they have committed to a certain period, 2030, 2040, to stop completely. So many of them were changing, oil companies changing to service holding companies, Then the global energy crisis, yes, like I mentioned, the Ukraine thing now came on, and then suddenly the capital allocation and control diversification was going on, geopolitical instability, regulation. So yes, I'll talk about the crisis. So when the crisis came on, and then we started to redouble our efforts. We should have done a lot of things before now. If we had known our AKK pipeline, all these are projects, if we had fired up very well and finished them, we could just have replaced Russia when they were looking for gas in Europe. So we now decided to increase our energy in trying to finish some of these pipeline gas projects that will take gas to Europe, the AKK, the one to Morocco, and all that. We renewed our efforts in that area. Next slide. The policy initiatives, I think the next one that we did, the transition plan, yes, we had to do an energy transition plan, and the transition plan, we did an homegrown one, and we decided that our net zero, I think we took 2060 after Saudi Arabia, remember? Then we worked around that, and we used gas to be our transition fuel, and we campaigned vigorously for that. And gas is going to be our transition fuel. Then we declared in 2021 a decade of gas, 2021 to 2030 in Nigeria, and we did a lot of initiatives, gas expansion program, LPG initiative, CNG initiative, the decade of gas secretariat was created to try and get more gas molecules to the system, because we have a shortage of about 3 billion stock of gas, and so on. So many of these initiatives came on board, and then we started to pursue them vigorously to see how do we use gas. For example, now that we did, the PIA came on 2021, which we've been on that for over 20 years, trying to pass the Petroleum Industry Act. It took us a long time because there were a lot of oppositions from here and there, especially because of certain things we were trying to get right. For example, the oil companies come in, they abandon, they go, we start to grapple with the commissioning and all that stuff. So we had to put in a lot of things like that. Even we are still battling. Even after the PIA being passed, we are still battling with a lot of regulations that were turned out, like the commissioning regulation that turned out, which is asking the IOCs to keep the money in Nigeria. They battled that. How can we keep the money here? Your banks are not safe. Oh, but our oil was safe. And it was good. Now the banks are not safe. You can make them safe. So we're battling with that to get us, okay, give us 20% now. Within 5 years, you can move the remaining percentages to Nigeria. Oh, that's not good enough. They want it to be in the economy. So we're working at such things, you know. Well, with the PIA is a game changer in the Nigerian oil and gas space, because for whatever it is worth, we have clear regulatory institutions. You have the policy institution is clear with its roles and responsibilities, and you have the commercial institution, the NNPC Limited, is clear with its roles. Although it's a transition period, we're trying to stop NNPC from doing policy issues and leave it to the ministry and all that. So there is a kind of implementation committee that was set up. We're trying to see how to establish all those institutions properly so that they can function as expected by the law. So that is has done 18 months, and we're hoping that by now the institution is standing, but is still playing some policy roles. And you will see what happened 2 days yesterday. We moved off almost all the top management in the NNPC Limited, trying to bring in new people who probably have been undergoing training on how to run a limited liability company. And we hope as we go ahead, if these new people take charge, they will be able to now run and work within their mandates and leave other people's jobs. So that is one thing you have to get right from the start. Reducing oil and gas contracting cycle is another big one that we've been on. We've managed to reduce many of the cycles from 36 months to about 6 months. It's a game changer because it's a lot of costs is involved when the contracting cycle is so long. Next slide. Improving policy, regulations, I mentioned some of these regulations we did. Different policy and regulations that are set to ensure resilience in the face of energy transition. Some of these active management, we've done active management policy, drilling and production regulations, domestic crude oil supply obligations. That's one, for example, for quite some time. The local refineries are having challenges to even get people to fund them, because they say, oh, where will you get the crude from when we fund you? So, but now, based on this law, you have to give a guarantee to them that we'll give you the crude when the refinery is ready. So that used to be difficult before, but now, at least on the 60% we have on the joint venture, we must give that guarantee by this law now. And that makes it easier for people who want to go into refining to get funders, you know. And then gas flaring, venting, maintain emissions, prevention, waste, pollution 2022, frontier exploration and fund administration. That's like trying to go into other areas, pull a fund. The PIA allows a fund to be pulled for exploring other areas, the Bauchi, Nasarawa, so many other areas that we have seen and discovered oil. The regulation came recently. We've been battling that for years, and this new administration was able to summon up the courage. Even though we have deregulated, we have stopped subsidy, the naira is floated practically now, and that's creating another challenge for us because it's not really easy to access the dollar at the rate it was before, and there was some round tripping going on around. And so the government felt, what's the need? If it's open, anybody who can play in the space, let them play. But unfortunately, the marketers are not able to play yet. It's still NNPC that is playing in that space actively, and whether we like it or not, we're still having some form of subsidy going on because you have to battle, manage the labor issues and so on. I mean, you can't just float overnight and it will just float like that. It will take some time before it sinks in. So, but we've done it. So we managed that until we were able to make it perfect. Partnerships, imagine partnerships. You know, a lot of, like the one that happened between, I think in particular when NPC acquired OVH, you know, and on account of that acquisition, it was able to declare by 18 billion in the first quarter of 2023, you know, as profit for that acquisition. So that means more of such, you know, has to be done. You have to reassess your portfolio, look at the assets that are not working. You know, now that is a limited liability company governed by the law, the corporate affairs law. You must declare profit, dividend, or they take out the management. And then we have working towards increasing our local refining capacity, the modular, the deep commercial refining optimization and so on, placing emphasis on hydroskilling refineries which has the capability to produce more petroleum products. I think the bottom line here, have the next slide there. Okay. Oh, the licensing, the marginal fee bid rounds, yes, we concluded that. And then we went on to the 7 deep offshore assets. We've practically concluded that as well. We're waiting for the final approval to the bidders. It was tough getting people to bid for this. We've been trying that. Failing. Initially, we wanted to depend on the IOCs that are in Nigeria at a point, looking at the renewed love for gas, and but that didn't work. It didn't work, maybe because of the commitments they too had. And then we had to go shopping for people that are ready to invest. We went around to Qatar, to Korea, to so many places. Okay? You have to do a lot of that in this, you have to do a lot of that to really go all out and look out for investors that are ready to come in. Rather than just throw it very open, and then after the process, you still don't get the investors to come in.
GMPC and GMPC, I think tomorrow Victor will talk more about it. GMPC is also undertaking extensive seismic acquisition in the Pertinent basin, which we hope that once it turns out positive as expected, the GMPC will assume proper leadership role in our sector. Dennis. Yeah. So, as earlier said, I think by Pio, that the need, if you have to attract investment, we need to demonstrate our geological promise. And one way that we think that we can demonstrate our geological promise is to have growth in data gap. And one of the challenges that we have in the first transition round was, in the perception of some investors, was that there was a serious data gap. The Commission have taken note of it, And recently I've signed about 4 or 5 multi-client settlement agreements with a number of companies. In the Eastern Basin, the Akita Basin, you have agreement with TGD partners to acquire about 12,000 square kilometers of 3D seismic. In the Central Basin, you have agreement with Aspero of Norway to acquire 10,000 kilometers of 3D seismic. And in the Tano Basin, you have agreement with TGS to also acquire about 14,000 seismic data. And there was also a listing agreement to call out for another seismic data acquisition. One strategy that we're also using to further enhance activity is expediting exploration activities. We have, as I told you, that we have about 40 licenses involving 12 operators. And some of these licenses are different stages of exploration. Some of the medium-sized companies are facing challenges in expediting the exploration due to a number of reasons which I cannot go into now. But what the Commission is trying to do is to encourage these companies to drill their first exploration wells before the exploration period elapses. And therefore, the 3 companies that we believe that are quite advanced in terms of the exploration activities, we are facilitating, we have a strategy, what we call 3-well campaign, by encouraging these companies to engage one rig contractor so that they will bring one rig and drill in succession. By doing that, you minimize the demob and mobilization and demobilization costs. And we believe that that will enhance, that will fast track the exploration and within a short period of time, and also minimize the exploration costs. In that 3-well campaign, the discussion is ongoing, and we hope that these companies will be able to drill the exploration wells before the exploration period elapses. So this is just showing our commitment to energy transition. So let's move on quickly. So with all this, just let me show you the current EMP activities, the status of it now. So for the last 5 years, a number of discoveries have been made, and they are in different stages of commercialization. You have the Pecan South, which was discovered in 2018, and come 1X by AGM. As you know, the contractor has moved the block, and the block is open. The government is also promoting the block for companies to take over the block. They have about 168 million barrels of oil equivalent. And they have a final well that was made by Springfield, which is also awaiting commercialization. We have Akuma 1X by ENI, which is a twin discovery, Evan Akuma. The contractor is currently preparing for appraisal of this well. They are in the process of acquiring a vessel to undertake geophysical and geotechnical studies to identify the location for the exploration well, and we hope that by first quarter of next year, 2024, they will drill their exploration well, and the contractor also have made another discovery, Okuma 1X, which is now undergoing estimation. Yes. So we have, as I said earlier, the Honorable Minister approved the Pecan field, which is expected to deliver first oil of about 80,000 barrels by 2026. And with the estimated development cost of Phase 1A and Phase 1B of about $8.2 billion, with the following facilities which are expected to be deployed to produce the oil. Yes. Then we have the 10 enhancement program. We all know the challenges that we face that we face with 10 fuel with declining production. The contractor has submitted a draft POD to the minister to arrest the decline and further boost production. It's expected that with the 10, now it's called TAPOD, 10 Amendment POD. It's ready to increase the oil reserve from the current level of around 130 million barrels to about 180 million barrels. And to also increase the gas reserves by additional 411 BCF of gas. And once it's approved, we hope that we'll be able to increase the current term production of below 20,000 barrels per day to well over 35,000 barrels per day. Further to the 10 TAPOD, the operator is also submitting another proposal on infrastructure-led exploration to monetize some, to further undertake further exploration with the aim of monetizing adjoining resources in the 10 development and production area. And that is also being considered as part of the approval process for the 10 enhancement program. Yes. And Dubi Southeast, I think Kwame earlier will talk about Dubi Southeast, which is currently adding about 30,000 barrels to the Dubi flow. Yes. I've been done shortly. And I talk about Urban Akuma, which the contractor is due to undertake first exploratory appraisal work early next year. And if the outcome is positive, the intention is that they will tie back to the existing LPSO Jack John Kufuor to enhance production from the OCTP field. And I won't bore you with GNPC, since there will be another session for GNPC tomorrow. But what I want to see is that GNPC is conducting reconnaissance survey of the GNPC, and currently they are infiltrating of the seismic acquisition. And we all hope that based on the indication from GNPC, inshallah, this will be another policy frame for Ghana. And I'll talk about multi-kind seismic data that the Commission is undertaking to further enhance the geological prospect of the country. Yes. This is the last. So this is the current activity level. You can see that the Western Basin is very busy, where you have the producing field and many companies are operating. But there are a lot of prospects in the Eastern Atlantic Basin, which are also open to be licenses for those who are quite interested. Yes, let's conclude. So in conclusion, next slide. In conclusion, what I will say is that the Commission and Ghana is committed in providing enable environment, for investment in the upstream sector, and government will continue to ensure that our petroleum resources are exploited and utilized in an optimal manner to sustain economic growth of the country. And the Commission will continue to work with our stakeholders, and indeed we are doing that very well with our IOCs in promoting the others and other investment in the sector. We continue to work with them in a very transparent manner so that we have a win-win for Ghana and investment.